Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Nathan Pickett, and this is going to be my review of WrestleMania 1. So, WrestleMania 1 was taglined as the greatest wrestling event of all time. Now, of course, this has changed throughout the years. WrestleMania 1 is not the be all end all, but it's a pretty good show. It was held in Madison Square Garden, New York City on March 31st, 1985. The official attendance inside the building was 19,121 people. The show consisted of 9 matches. In the main event, Hulk Hogan and Mr. T defeated Paul Orndorff and Roddy Piper. Also, Wendy Richter, accompanied by her manager, Cyndi Lauper, defeated Leilani Kai to win the WWF Women's Championship, and Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik defeated the U.S. Express to win the WWF Tag Team Championship. Gene Okerlund opened the event by singing the Star Spangled Banner. The originally intended singer, a celebrity guest that Okerlund and Vince refused to name, failed to appear. Now, there have been rumors of who it was supposed to be, but I don't think we'll ever know. The first match was between Tito Santana and the Executioner, who was under the mask Buddy Rose, the first that would be played by Buddy Rose. Santana won the match after applying a figure 4 leg lock. That match was okay. It was the opening match, so I'm only going to give it like 2 stars out of 5. Following the match, King Kong Bundy and accompanied by Jimmy Hart, which, it was the 80s in wrestling. Jimmy Hart and Bobby Heenan were accompanying most of the wrestlers to the ring. And Special Delivery Jones made their way to the ring for the match. Now, this is interesting because at one point this was considered the record for the shortest WrestleMania match in history. Now, of course, it's since been beaten by other matches, but it was 9 seconds. King Kong Bundy hit SD Jones with a splash in the corner and pinned him. Now, of course, this was surpassed by The Rock defeating Eric Rowan at WrestleMania 32, which I will review at some point in the future. Although the match actually lasted closer to 24 seconds. The next match was between Ricky Steamboat and Matt Bourne, who eventually Matt Bourne became Doink the Clown. Steamboat took the early advantage in the matchup until Bourne flipped him over and slammed him to the mat with a belly-to-belly suplex. After performing a flying crossbody, Steamboat pinned Bourne for the win. Now, this match wasn't great. It wasn't Savage Steamboat 2 years later. But for an opening, or for a third match of the night, it was good. I'm going to give it 2.5. And the squash match that lasted 9 seconds but debated 24 between King Kong Bundy and SD Jones. I'm only going to give that 1 because it wasn't really a match. It was just, let's see how strong King Kong Bundy is. After the match, David Sammartino accompanied his father and Bruno and Brutus Beefcake, accompanied by Johnny Valiant, made their way to the ring. Now, this was before Johnny Valiant... this was after Johnny Valiant had left the Valiant Brothers in the territories, and he had been turned face. They had a match. It wasn't very good. Valiant had some botches. You could tell Bruno wasn't really into it because at that point he wanted to get out of the wrestling business. He was just there to support his son. So, and the match ended in no contest, so I'm giving it 1.5 stars. Because it was actually a really good match, working up to the ending, but the ending just fell flat. The Junkyard Dog and the reigning Intercontinental Champion Greg Valentine was, of course, accompanied by none other than Jimmy Hart, who accompanied King Kong Bundy earlier. Throughout WrestleMania was 1 and 2 especially, you'll see a lot of Jimmy Hart. He was a big fixture of the first 2 WrestleManias. Not so much the third one, but the first two, definitely. Um, so this was an Intercontinental Championship match. Eventually, Valentine pinned Junkyard Dog with his feet on the ropes for leverage, which of course is not legal, but the referee didn't see it. But as a result, Tito Santana ran down to the ring and explained to the referee what had happened, and the match was restarted. Junkyard Dog eventually won the match by countout after he failed to re-enter the ring. Valentine, however, kept the title, as the titles do not change hands through countouts, which is pretty obvious if you've been watching wrestling for any amount of time. I'm only going to give this match 2.5, because it was a good match, but the whole Tito Santana coming out because he had already wrestled earlier, it just didn't make sense. I'm sure if I had watched the shows leading up to WrestleMania, it would have made sense, but it just didn't make sense to me. So the WWF tag belts are next. Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik were accompanied to the ring by Freddie Blassie, their manager for their whole run as a tag team. Challenged the reigning champs, the U.S. Express, who were Mike Rotundo and Barry Windham. This was Barry Windham before the Four Horsemen and Mike Rotundo before IRS. They were accompanied by Captain Lou, who had a big storyline leading up to the main event, or to the whole Cyndi Lauper thing. But it was never really acted on, I don't think. It was never really acted on. The U.S. Express dominated early, but then the way Sheik and Volkov go, they use their dirty underhanded tactics. The Sheik hit Windham in the head with Blassie's cane as the referee had his back turned. Volkov got the pin, and the Sheik and Volkov are now the tag team champions. This match was good, but it lacked something. It lacked either Windham and Rotundo didn't know how to work with the Sheik and Volkov, or the Sheik and Volkov just weren't interested. They were just doing it for the paycheck. I'm going to say it was just the paycheck. The next match on the card was the $15,000 body slam challenge between Andre the Giant and Big John Studd, who was accompanied by Bobby Heenan. Now this is weird because a couple years later, Bobby Heenan is accompanying Andre to face Hulk Hogan. It's weird to see that, and it's such a big match in Andre's career. It's weird to see him being the face at WrestleMania going up against a Bobby Heenan wrestler. The stipulation was that Andre had to slam Studd to get the $15,000, or if Studd slammed Andre would have to retire. After the beginning of the match in the defensive position, Andre countered with chops and a headbutt. Then, once Andre controlled the match, and after weakening Studd's knees with multiple kicks, Andre was able to lift Studd over his shoulders and execute the slam for the win. But after he won the match, he collected the prize money. He started throwing the money out to the audience. He did, however, grab the bag holding the remainder of the winnings and ran from ringside. As a result, Andre was able to continue his career, and his WWF win streak was unscathed. Now that's WWF. Now, he had been defeated in other promotions, but WWF is WWF and nothing else. Then the women's championship match happened, and it's so weird in 1985 to see a women's championship match being the co-main event. Wendy Richter was managed by singer Cyndi Lauper and her manager David Wolf. They had the whole thing with Fabulous Moolah and Wendy Richter, and Moolah was with Leilani Kai. What we know of Moolah now is it's not good, but this was before the whole she pimped out her girls and all this stuff. Moolah grabbed Richter as soon as the match started with the interference. As soon as it started, you kind of expected it from Moolah because at the time she was playing a nasty bitch heel. But Kai went for a flying crossbody, got rolled up. 1, 2, 3. Wendy Richter becomes the new women's champion. Now, the last match was Hogan and Mr. T against, accompanied by Jimmy Snuka. So it was the whole Snuka Piper, Mr. T Piper, Orndorff, Hogan storyline, who were Miss Piper and Orndorff were accompanied by Bob Orton, who had become kind of Roddy's bodyguard in this storyline. Professional boxer Muhammad Ali was the special guest referee, but he was outside the ring until the end. New York Yankees manager at the time, Billy Martin, was the guest ring announcer, while Liberace was the guest timekeeper. First, Piper and Orndorff made their way to the rings as bagpipes and drums were played, and then Mr. T and Piper began to trade blows in the ring. Now, if you know WrestleMania history, that ended up becoming a big thing for the next year's WrestleMania when they had the boxing match. Muhammad Ali punched Piper in an attempt to restore order. After the match's order was restored, Piper and Orndorff took advantage, and Orndorff locked Hogan into a full Nelson. Orton climbed to the top rope to attempt to knock out Hogan. Instead, Orton mistakenly hit Orndorff, and Hogan pinned him for the win in the match. In frustration, Piper knocked out the in-ring official, Pat Patterson, before he and Orton retreated backstage, leaving Orndorff alone in the ring with Hogan, Mr. T, and Snuka. So the Wendy Richter match, I only give 3 stars, but the main event, I'm going to give it 4 stars because they were working with what they had. And they had Mr. T in there. He couldn't do much. He was not a wrestler. Approximately 3 months. So the aftermath of the show. 3 months after WrestleMania, Greg Valentine lost the Intercontinental Championship to Tito Santana in a cage match. So that's where that storyline ended up going. At about the same time, Volkov and Sheik lost the tag team titles back to the U.S. Express. They held the title until August, when the team of Beefcake and Valentine, later known as the Dream Team, so they had turned Valentine face afterwards, or they had turned, I'm not sure how it worked, but they turned one of the two men heel. Stud formed after the Body Slam challenge, Stud formed a tag team with not Andre, King Kong Bundy, and went after Andre and Hogan. So late in 1985, Wendy Richter lost her WAF Women's Champion in controversial fashion. Who was someone known as the Spider Lady, who was then revealed to be the Fabulous Moolah. And apparently, Wendy Richter was unaware of the title change even happening. She left the WWF short after, and Moolah held the title for about 2 years. So the show, I'm going to give it, overall, it was a good show, but it was not great. And I mean, it was the first WrestleMania. You weren't going to get an amazing show on the first one. It was the first attempt they had. So I'm going to give it 3 stars, and that's pushing it. I don't think it was a great show. It didn't deserve a lot of the hype it was getting. I don't think. Back then it did, but now if you go back and watch it, it's a different game. Let me know what you think in the comments, though. I'm really excited to hear what people have to say about this. For now, I'm Big Rig Pickett, 193, signing off.